Hey traders, Raghee here, and in this Simpler Futures recap video, we're going to talk about why you really need to be a stock trader if you're a futures trader, futures index trader, and why if you're a futures index trader, you really are, in fact, a stock trader. And that's because if you were to just, I like to use the word dissect, not to bring back memories of 7th grade science and that poor frog, but what is inside the Nas? What is inside the S&P? What is inside the Dow? It's stocks with different weighting, and it's those weightings of those names that help move that index around, and in turn, oftentimes the index can move the stock around. But I want to know what's happening on the inside of this index. We're going to take a look at the Nasdaq today because I think there's been some very interesting action on the Nasdaq as it's been the weakest of the three, Dow, YM, ES, S&P, and the Nasdaq, the NQ. It's been the weakest, and there's been some interesting price action on names like Facebook, GOOG, GOOGL, and Microsoft. Because, again, this is Nasdaq futures trading, and I use this layout. I call it the multi-chart, or maybe one of the traders in the chat room called it the multi-chart. But what it is basically looking at 8 of the most important heavily weighted names within this index, and then 3 psychologically significant names in Netflix, Priceline, and NVIDIA. Because while these don't have Netflix, Priceline, and NVIDIA, while they don't have high impact weighting, psychologically they pack a wallop. So where we are right now in the Nas is what I call pressing validity. We have printed a blue grab candle. This candle is likely to end blue as well. Why it's green right now, it should be blue. It will be blue. And, you know, the fact that it's inside the wave but still trading above the 34 EMA on the low says that the uptrend is still intact. But if I want to get in, I should be much more conservative about it. So finally, what I'm looking at here is the way in which the market is, number one, testing support, and number two, whether or not the individual components are also testing support. So if Apple is at a buyable level, if Microsoft is at an oversold buyable level, and on, right? Amazon, Facebook, Google. Interestingly enough, this will be a trend follow. This will be a trend follow, but these are oversold support level buy conversations. Nonetheless, if we are seeing support on these, if they are hitting some sort of buy, some sort of support level, then this will also in turn support what's going on here. And then, you know, come back around full circle. You know, one of the names that I bought pretty heavily yesterday was Microsoft. Now, considering the weakness we saw, Microsoft held its own, and I'm pretty pleased about that, because I do suspect that we're going to move higher into the end of the year. But between tax reform, FIFOs, Russians, you name it, right? It's just kind of, you know, sector rotation. It's just a very interesting narrative. But if you can keep an eye on these names, even if you create a layout like this, you'll be able to pinpoint better entries because you understand, and there's 2 ways you can look at this. You know, I've always called this the tide. This could be an ETF or it could be the futures. And I call these the boats. Okay, and another analogy from a strategic standpoint would be, do you want to buy the haystack or do you want to look for the needle? And sometimes it does merit looking for the needle. I mean, I'm one of those people that believes it's always a stock picker's market. I love when people say that. It's a stock picker's market. It's always a stock picker's market. However, with index futures, with ETFs, I don't have to be looking for the needle in the haystack. I can buy the haystack. And there's value in that too. Right now, I'm looking at both. And I'm telling you, if you're doing both, you'll be able to better pinpoint entries. And I think that Apple, Microsoft, Amazon are at interesting levels. I think GOOGL mostly is also at an interesting level. You look at this Darvis area right there. So if I don't have wave support, I'll look for Darvis support, and that becomes an overbought, oversold conversation where I'll use the stochastics and I'll fade the weakness. But it's really all contingent on the Nasdaq really staying above 6,200. And that's what I'm looking at here going into the remainder of the week.